everybody on Facebook, as well as in our audience, to our conscious conversation on breaking the mental health stigma. Just a few housekeeping notes. We're at Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital. There's a restroom out the door. We also have snacks, and we have some information on the hospital at the table outside the door. Please make sure that you grab some of that. My name is Isaac Adai. I'm the founder of Conscious Conversation, and my team members Jared Strickland and Meryl Johnson are also here. This is our 12th or so event that we've done. We're going to do a lot more on a lot of different topics, and we ask that you engage with us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Conscious CONV, and we're also online at consciousconversation.co. All right. So before we get started today, we're going to bring up the CEO of Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital, Mr. Jameson. He's going to just give us a brief welcome, and then we'll talk about our panel.
Thank you. It is great to have you here. My name is Jameson Norton, CEO at Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital. This is an incredible group. We appreciate you coming here for this important event. I can't think of a more appropriate event as we celebrate Mental Health Awareness Month. For conscious conversations, we talk about the things that we can do. There's no more important thing than having a conversation, having a meaningful, intentional conversation about our personal journey, about the opportunities out there. There's no more important thing than we're doing tonight, so thank you for being here for each other. Vanderbilt Behavioral Health, we serve the community across a wide continuum of care. Our mission is to improve the lives of those impacted by mental illness, really in threefold: to provide personalized, quality medicine, but to also educate the community and create kind of a teaching environment in addition to a healing environment. So this space really was designed for this purpose, to bring our community together, to talk about important issues, important research, to be a community itself. So we meet on a monthly basis and have a community gathering for that self-care and taking care of our own as we care for the community. We are grateful that you're here. This is also a space for NAMI every week. We will have a NAMI support group as well as an opportunity to educate around different issues that we see. So I want to welcome you here. This is a distinguished panel who I can't think of better experts to talk about the topic. But again, we all come from different perspectives. Families, encouragers, we're champions of change in a lot of different ways. So thank you. I hope this is an empowering time for you. We appreciate you being here, and we are honored to host. Thank you.
And again, thank you to Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital for hosting our discussion. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into why we're here. So of course, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and we all understand the importance of mental health, but what we've seen looking at research in urban communities, and particularly minority communities, there is a stigma around addressing mental health and mental illness. And so today we wanted to explore some of the reasoning behind why that stigma exists, and hopefully share information that can help to not only break the stigma of mental health, but point people to resources to be able to assist with the treatment of mental health and mental illness. So I'm going to give our panel an opportunity to just briefly talk about their background. And I want to also mention that one of our sponsors is Mari Ross Alexander of the Ross Center, and Eric Capehart is a therapist at the Ross Center, so he'll talk a little bit about it during his introduction. We'll start with Dr. Ritchie.
Good evening, folks. Thanks for joining us. My name is Bill Ritchie. I'm a general and forensic psychiatrist, and I'm the CEO of the Lloyd Elam Mental Health Center on the campus of Meharry Medical College. I've been here in the Nashville area for about going on five and a half years now, and I'm very honored to be present among you and to help facilitate this discussion with you all this evening. Thank you for having me.
My name is Choya Small. I'm a trauma expert, completing my PhD at Rebecca Nazarene University in clinical counseling. I practice mental health counseling in the Green Hills area. I'm also a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach, as well as an author of a couple of books, but the one related to this is titled The Caged in Heart: How Your Childhood Wounds Are Affecting Your Adult Life.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Capehart, and most of you may know me as an expert mentor. I'm the founder of a mentorship organization here in Nashville, Tennessee called All the King's Men, where we mentor African American males with a mission to reduce the likelihood that they will ever come into contact with juvenile court. On June the 3rd, we'll be celebrating our 10th year anniversary, and so that's a milestone. And so I'm a graduate student counselor practicing at the Ross Center, where we have 18 locations in and around the county and throughout Tennessee, and we're also in 4 different states, which gives us an opportunity to do a lot of different things in a lot of different places. We do telemedicine. One of our locations is with a college called Campbell University in North Carolina, where we're currently working with the football team there. And so that's a great opportunity for those of us who are interested in sports psychology. We also do private practice, where I also see a handful of clients there. I work at the University Counseling Center at Tennessee State University as well. And we also do what's known as integrated behavioral health, where we work with Matthew Walker, where we bring the mental health piece to the medical field and work with those professionals there. That's who I am, and I'm really honored to be up here with all of these experts. You know me, I transferred into the field because what I noticed as a mentor and in the field was a lot of what we were dealing with were mental health issues, and mentorship was just one piece. And so I felt pulled to go ahead and do something to where I could bring more services to reach people and help them achieve their goals and help them move from where they are to where they want to be, not only with the mentorship piece, but also the mental health piece as well. So I appreciate all of you being here tonight, and I hope I can learn a lot, and hope you all learn a lot as well.
My name is Alma Arthur Rowe, and I am an assistant professor of clinical psychiatry and behavioral sciences here at Vanderbilt. I'm also the medical director of complex behavioral services, which is a team that works on patients who have both psychiatric and medical diagnoses who need additional support during their hospitalization. My training, in addition to general psychiatry, is in consult liaison psychiatry or in psychosomatic medicine. Again, looking at the relationship and the overlap between medical diagnoses and psychiatric diagnoses. I'm originally from the Nashville area. I've returned here going on 6 years, and I've been at Vanderbilt during this time.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Adair. I'm the founder and executive director of the Mental Health Initiative. The Mental Health Initiative is a nonprofit organization that I started while in grad school here at Tennessee State University. And what we do is we pretty much bring awareness and eliminate stigma to mental illnesses and mental disorders through education, advocacy, and research. Our latest initiative is the Long Live Life Initiative. It's a youth initiative that we started as a response to the call to action from Megan Berry. Megan Berry. And she had a call to action because of youth violence that has been increasing in the Nashville area. And so we started this Long Live Life youth program to pretty much train and develop young youth from the ages of 12 to 19 years old in order to be able to understand a lot more about themselves, how to navigate through life, also to understand how to get involved in their community through legislative processes, even writing legislation, even doing other things as community beautification projects and such. So it's a new initiative that we just started at Cone Learning Center, and we're happy to be ending our first year, and we hope to do some more things next year in the metropolitan public school system. Also, I am a employee and mental health specialist here at Vanderbilt Behavioral Health. This is my boss, CEO Jameson. And I'm excited to be here speaking at Vanderbilt Behavioral Health. I just started 4 months ago, and I'm really happy to be here and excited to be with this panel. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Casimora Lampley. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am currently the program director for the Regionalized Therapy Mentoring Program with the YMCA of Luton, Tennessee. My background is primarily working with children and families. Having a school-based therapist, I was an intensive in-home therapist for 2 years previously, specifically targeting working with youth who have been trauma survivors and the impact that has on them as well as their families, which is the root of why I'm involved in mental health, to see
Again, good evening. My name is May Farrell. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I have been doing this for about 12 years. I am currently the coordinator for the intensive outpatient program at Trust Point Hospital. So I am leading and facilitating groups 3 hours every day. So I am actively engaged in therapy 15 hours a week. Yeah, personally. A little bit about my background. I graduated in 2005 with my master's, and I was in Memphis for a while. So everything worked out well. I lived in Nevada and Utah. I was out west for 40 years. Came back to Nashville, and I've been here since 2010. So I've been at Trust Point for about 3 years. Social work, you know, one question I often get, and I think I'm not a social worker on the panel, which is incredibly interesting to me. One question I get is, why did I choose this? I didn't, it chose me. I have tried to get out of this for y'all. I have tried, actively tried, in some kind of way I always get sucked in. A population that I am passionate about are recovery, substance abuse, and I am actively working on my LADAC, licensed alcohol and drug abuse counselor. So that's a little bit about who I am.
Can we give our panel a hand? So going into our first question, and this isn't something that everybody has to answer, but feel free to answer if you choose to. So we got some folks on our Facebook Live feed. Thank you for that. Make it work. Make sure you share it. It's working. If you don't mind silencing your device, please. We're happy you're excited about the Facebook feed. Thank you. All right, so getting into this discussion, we kind of want to set the groundwork on this topic. So the first question is, what, in your opinion, in your experience, is mental illness? Very general question, but we'd love to get some perspectives on that. Anybody can go first.
I'm sure we'd all say something different. So one thing about the definition, or trying to put it all in a few words, mental health would be any type of significant impairment that affects a person, you know, emotionally, affects them and their mood. So any type of significant, you know, issue, incident that would affect your emotion or your mood. That's how I would begin to define what mental health is, and I'm sure my fellow panelists will add to that.
I would say it's anything that has, when we talk about trauma specifically, it's anything that has happened to you that has shaped the way you view yourself and view others in a negative way. And so some people think, oh, mental illness, and well, I wasn't in the Vietnam War, and I wasn't raped, I wasn't molested. But you can develop a mental illness, if you will, because mommy and daddy didn't show up to any of your basketball games. And so oftentimes we make it this big, grandiose, you know, traumatic experience when necessarily it doesn't take a big T trauma to develop a mental health illness.
Yeah, I would just say mental illness is just any impairment of normal functioning behavior. If you normally used to getting up and going to work every day, and for some reason something is affecting you neurologically or just mentally, that and you're unable to go to work, then that becomes a mental illness. And the simplest put is if it's affecting your normal routine or activities in a significant manner, then that can be considered mental illness.
I am going to say that part of what mental illness is that it is an illness first and foremost. I think a lot of times people think that mental illness is our choices. Having worked with mental illness, when no one chooses that. And so I think that's one of the most important things to keep in mind is that it is something that impacts your mental and the way that you live and the way you interact with other people and the way that you're able to approach, each one of those areas can impact your mental health, your mental wellness. And the same way that your mental health can impact how you are socially, how you are physically, how you are spiritually. So it's all connected. And so I oftentimes, in trying to separate them, I always end up putting it all back together because we're complicated like that. We're made up of all of these things simultaneously. And if one area is off balance or is shifted in one area, you can see it have a ripple effect throughout your life. So the goal is to help you identify what is that quality of life to you. What is that joy that you may have had or that you want to have again, and how can we help realign that?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what she said, the wholeness of an individual. The individual is embedded in a complex relationship of the biological, psychological, social, and also I like to include spiritual factors. And so all those things are called the biopsychosocial spiritual model that we kind of use. Every aspect of those, that model can affect one or the other. So, for instance, a biological disorder or a person diabetes or heart disease or any type of obesity or things that are preventable can also affect your mental well-being, and vice versa. Your mental well-being can also do the same thing. And it can also affect your social factors. It can affect the relationships that you build with your family members and children and colleagues. And then also can affect your spiritual life. Your spiritual life is different from a actual religion. Spirituality is more so just the idea of what is the meaning of life and that something greater than yourself, outside of yourself, is available, and that kind of gives us a little bit of hope in life, whether you believe in God, Allah, or Allah, whatever. But the idea that you have something greater outside of yourself, higher power, is your spiritual life, and that can also be affected by mental illness. So the biopsychosocial spiritual model is what we kind of use as an integrative, holistic operative.
And sometimes that concept of spirituality can be so abstract when we're working with people. So one way that I like to do it is connecting. At what point, where are you, what are you doing when you feel the most connected? And so that our patients, I want my patients to be able to have a point of reference and say, you know what, man, when I was out camping and it was just me and the stars and I felt at peace. Okay, we will use that as your higher power for now so that it can become more palatable. Because sometimes when you go to talk about higher power or God, folks are already like, I'm out. Like, you've already lost it. So I work really hard at including that spirituality piece for making it very palatable, almost dumbing it down for people.
At the risk of sounding reductionistic, when I heard the question from our moderator, I started thinking about what I instruct my residents and my med students, and what I started thinking about was, okay, what is mental illness? Well, I started thinking about what is a psychiatric diagnosis, okay? In order to establish a psychiatric diagnosis, what I tell my trainees is you need three things. You need STD. What do you think I meant? So you need a cluster of symptoms, okay? And it's kind of like a fire where you need heat, you need fuel, and you need oxygen. If you don't have those three, then you don't have a fire. If you don't have STD, a cluster of symptoms, and that DSM-5 now, Arabic numerals is what we use. This gives you all the symptoms. The T stands for a time frame, a specific period of time. For major depressive disorder, it's 2 weeks of a cluster of symptoms. And then every panelist here has mentioned the D, which stands for dysfunction, social or occupational dysfunction. We all use different words to describe this D, but basically the D stands for dysfunction. You need all three in order to have a psychiatric diagnosis. Short of that, you have something else, a syndrome or something of that nature. But this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'm teaching my supervisees when someone walks into their office describing their symptoms. Sometimes people don't know that they have major depression. They say, I'm not depressed, I'm not feeling depressed, but their sleep is disturbed, their appetite is disturbed, their energy level is disturbed, they've lost hopefulness about life, and the way to get to that information is you ask a patient, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Everybody in this room should have an answer to that. And if you don't, that might be one of the diagnostic criteria. Guilt, hopelessness, helplessness. A change in your energy level, your psychomotor activity, and then thoughts of hurting yourself or killing yourself. And so 3 or 4 of these symptoms over a 2-week time frame, and social and occupational dysfunction is a psychiatric diagnosis.
Any perspectives or comments on that from the audience before we move to the next question?
Why 2 weeks? The DSM-5 is a consensus document, okay? And so one of the people who wrote the book, Janet Spitzer, I would refer you to her. It's 2 weeks for major depression. It's 1 week for mania, which is one of the cycles in bipolar disorder or manic depressive disorder. It's only 1 week, and that's interesting. I was in the Air Force and I first noticed that as I was studying for my boards. I said to myself, why 1 week? Well, probably because a manic person really can produce a lot of dysfunction for themselves and others. And so the mental health community would like to respond to that a little bit more urgently than the 2 weeks for someone who's suffering from depression. I hope that answers your question.
No?
When we're saying DSM, I'm pretty sure people don't know what that is. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders. It's the book that we all use to diagnose people who come and present with mental health issues.
And I'll say the time frame is important just because some things are situational. So if you lose a partner or a best friend or a significant mentor and you are experiencing extreme sadness after their death for a week but are able to go to work and still be sad and function, that's not depression. But if you are experiencing these symptoms over a period of time, it is alluding to something else. So that's why time is important, because you can be extremely sad for 1 day because you wrecked your car and then go back to your normal function with your next year.
Like an argument with a spouse, you'd be sad then, but that's not necessarily meaning you have a mental health disorder.
So the DSM-5 started with DSM-1, and then it's going up 2, 3, 4, 4TR. DSM-5 probably be another version out soon with different criteria, but all these are criteria. Well, these are all criteria that we all use to pretty much put a diagnostic. And again, like Castro was saying, if you lose a loved one and you're depressed for a month or 2, that's called grief. That's just normal. That's normal things. But depression, if you're depressed for 2 weeks, it can do some serious major dysfunction in your life, whether it be with your job, your relationship with your family members, your spouse, or whatever. And that is a problem where it may need some type of treatment for it.
And if we could try to elaborate, folks, because for me, when I got into the field, I would hear these words and really not know what they really mean. Like, what does it really mean to be depressed? And so being depressed, if I could describe it, is just a consistent feeling of woe is me every day, most of the day, not eating like you normally would, not sleeping, not doing the things that you would normally do, not doing the things that, you get excited about no longer excite you. You begin to be, reclusive, staying to yourself. So if you're experiencing any of those symptoms for a 2-week period, then that would be an indicator that it will be time to see a mental health professional. But, just because you may be sad about a specific incident, that's not necessarily saying that you are going to be depressed with a major depressive disorder or something extreme. You just may be, what we go to a lot, at least I do, is an adjustment disorder, which you kind of maybe there's some things changing in your life and you're trying to adjust to it, and it's kind of difficult for you. Yeah.
But please don't go on WebMD or the National website and diagnose yourself.
Yeah, you'll have all kinds of stuff.
You are going to diagnose yourself with several co-occurring disorders that do not co-occur at the same time. We are trained clinicians and we still have questions about the DSM, or at least I do.
It's a combination of an art and a science. And what we don't want is for you to then walk out, purchase a DSM-5, go through it with a highlighter and say, by golly, I have it. If you feel as if some of this is resonating to you on some level, you can seek out someone to help you tease it out. And it can be tricky. It can be, where does a relationship that has ended end, and where does major depression begin? Where does my personality begin and a personality disorder come into play? People have told me I am acting like I am bipolar. Well, what does that really mean? And does that really mean that I have a mood disorder? And so you can go in and you can start with any of the providers on the panel, your primary care provider, and say, hey, these are some of the questions that I have. And you can start that journey to find out exactly what is the best way for you to get the help and support that you need.
And the booklet you're speaking about, it's based off of quantitative data. I'm assuming it's based off of years of research.
Yes.
And within that, is it also based off of people that look like me? And
No. Not like
So before we go down So before we go down that path, balance, I'm glad you asked that question, because I wanted us to kind of shift toward this aspect of the discussion around stigma, particularly as it relates to minorities and urban communities, right? So we know that this stigma exists. Why does that stigma exist? That's more so a question to the panel. What are some of the factors that are attributing to this stigma around mental illness, particularly in urban communities?
I'll jump in because it's an area that's really passionate, that I'm really passionate about. One of those things, and I don't think we talk about this as much, is historical makeup of what therapists look. You have a panel of seven therapists or clinicians of color in front of you. 40, 50 years ago, that is not the reality. Also, 40, 50 years ago, if you're looking at the civil rights movement, there was no reason for my grandmother to feel like she could go to a white male therapist who today would be a perfectly understanding person, tell them about her family's issues, and feel that they would understand that and not send them away. I had an uncle who's schizophrenic who never saw treatment because if we go and tell the white people, they're going to put him away. So part of that is mistrust of the community. And so it's beautiful to see other therapists who look like us come into the field to provide culturally sensitive services, but that's one of the aspects, and I won't list all of them because I'm sure everybody has a bunch of things they can say. But for me, that's something that's really important.
Yes, just to piggyback off what she said, it goes all the way back to Tuskegee experiment. I mean, the mistrust of African Americans with medical clinicians and anybody that's in an authoritative role. And so what I did some research on this. It's called perceived stigma. It's a little bit different from social stigma. It's how we perceive what others may think about us if we've been diagnosed with a mental illness. For instance, substance use disorder. A lot of people refuse treatment because in our society or our small community, African American makeup, you're likely to be looked down upon if you have a substance use disorder. And even though you may be dealing with it, everyone knows that you have a substance use disorder. Going to seek treatment for it and actually being diagnosed with it is even worse from our historical standpoint, because now everyone knows that you have been diagnosed and you're being treated for a substance use disorder. Even though this might be able to save your life, even though this treatment may be able to help you, and also help your family and other people that you may not even know, just by your own journey. The historical makeup from always from the Tuskegee experiment, from our distrust in medical professionals, and also others, individuals, healthcare people, you know, just we do not believe that they can actually help us in the proper manner.
I think too, I'll share that as an African American community, we are very resilient individuals, and we're very, from a collective standpoint, very spiritual. And so if you base it off of having a resilient background, that is, we are supermen and we are superwomen, and from back to slavery, you have had to bear a great amount of weight by yourself, or you might have your own community. And so what happens now is we're not as adaptive to changing and evolving with society that says you now have the opportunity to take that weight off and place it on somebody else. Instead, we continue to hold it within ourselves, which then creates mental illness because we're holding so much stress, which then, you know, why we have so high rates of diabetes, and cancer, and then heart disease. And so also from a spiritual perspective, we spiritualize it instead of saying you actually have a mental or emotional issue. It's you need to pray about it, you need to fast, and we're going to cast that demon out. Yes, I'm very spiritual. Believe in God, believe in the Bible 100%. And even when I went through my own mental health healing journey, God specifically said, I'm going to help you heal. We're going to do this together, and you're going to go get some help. And so for us, I know in our community, even at churches, it's let's just pray, let's lay hands. So that's what I would say. It's one of the things. It's resiliency, and we're very spiritual. Nothing wrong with that. So that's a strength, but it's also learning how to shift that strength and realize it's now no longer adaptive, but now maladaptive.
I think it goes to a point of not wanting to be viewed as weak. And we, as a people, can go to the ends of the earth to prevent others from thinking of us as being weak, even if it's to our own demise. And I think that's a large part of it. And so being vulnerable and saying that there is something in my life, or there's an area in my life that needs to be addressed or fixed that's not going according to the plan that I would have hoped, it is a major thing to not only have to verbalize, but then find someone that you feel that you could tell that to, who could then help you and then not use that information against you. And so it's a lot that has to happen internally, and then you want to find a reflection of someone who can understand the experience that you're going through. And when you can't find that reflection, again, it can make you turn more inside, turn towards yourself. I would say with the spiritual portion as well, if I was not with you right now, I would be at church on Wednesday night. And so I feel as if that could be an essential part of your total wellness. However, it's the same thing to where if you came to me and said that you were diagnosed with diabetes, I would want you to take your insulin. I would want you to maybe walk around the block a little bit. I would want to find out what's happening with your diet. I would look at a few things to try to help and support you. I would like for us to take that same approach when it comes to our mental health as well. Spirituality, praying, reading your Bible can definitely be a part of it, but let's see what else that we can add to kind of help and support you go through that, but that takes a level of vulnerability that we don't necessarily have at times in our community. And I think that's a protective thing as well, just trying to protect ourselves, but sometimes for our own demise.
Anybody in the audience want to address that? Go ahead.
I have a question, my panelists. We're talking from the perspective of the patient or the person that is living with mental illness. Can you speak to the people that are around that person and sort of how they come into play? So we're talking about resilience, we're talking about spirituality. Maybe a family member might say, you know what, all you have to do is pray. So talk about the support systems of those individuals and how that plays a role, how we should do that.
Part of that is we internalize. I'm not a mother, but I have 8 peaceful nephews. So something's going wrong with my babies. I'm like, okay, did I do something to contribute to this? No parent wants to hear that their child has a life-altering diagnosis. And a lot of people, if your child is diagnosed with leukemia, you don't want to hear that that's life-altering. But it's not something that you cause. People internalize a lot of things. my child is experiencing depression, or my child was sexually assaulted and is now a trauma survivor, or if my child is experiencing extreme anxiety, what have I done as a parent to cause this? And the reality is, there's so many different factors that goes into a person developing a diagnosis. I'm certain there are people who've experienced things that I've experienced who have never been diagnosed with depression, and I have. I think part of it is we have to try to separate ourselves while also being supportive. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about you as a parent or a caregiver or a loved one if somebody you love is diagnosed. It doesn't mean that your life is different now, though. In order to be supportive, you don't shame them for having to go to their therapy appointment. Offer to give them a ride. Don't make jokes about somebody being bipolar. You can support someone and it not be about you, but it does have an impact. I won't say that having a family member who is diagnosed with bipolar disorder doesn't change your life. It does. And so we are in the information age. We have so much access. Get information. It is available. It is there. I offer it freely. You want to talk about mental health? I will talk to you all day long, probably too much. But get information. Get informed. Get therapy services for yourself. You don't have to have a diagnosis in order to see a therapist. I think a whole lot of things and a little bit of therapy take a lot of folks a long way. That's just me.
I wanted to speak to that. You know, as therapists, we always, when we're assessing our clients, we generally, most times we'll ask about the support system because many times that's going to come into play in terms of treatment planning. And so we may want to invite, you know, your closest friend into a session so that we can do some psychoeducation with them about the particular diagnosis you may be, you know, labeled with. And just so that they can better understand how they can play, what role they can play in helping you, you know, get better. And so especially with families, you know, I see this all the time, you know, a family will come in, everybody comes in, but everybody's saying, well, this one person is the problem, right? And so that person becomes an identified client, but we can't only treat that one person. We have to treat everybody because everybody's a part of that system, and everybody's going to have to play a role in that person's mental well-being in the long run. So the support system is oftentimes very important, and we always want to assess to see who do you have in your life that you can turn to at a time where you need someone, you know, outside of us to give you some support.
And who you can't reach out to. That we need to be clear about that too. I think it's important to know who is a good person to talk to, but who are the toxic people in your life that are contributing to the problem. And so that's something I'm very open about with people. Yes, we want to know who's important. I want to meet them and put a face to them. I want to have a dialogue with them. I want to, you know, provide education where I can. But I also want to know who you don't need to be around. I want to meet them. I want to, you know, put a face to it so I can help that person understand why this person may be good for them and why this other person may be not so good. May not necessarily be bad. They just may have better options. Okay.
I saw another hand. Was there another question? Okay. Go ahead and I'll come. Go ahead.
I think one of y'all said this earlier, but actually, and it kind of reminded me of a past, something that occurred about a few months ago. But a soror of mine she worked in the same profession as y'all, and she had killed herself. How do y'all decompress a lot of the stuff of the weight that you guys take upon yourselves from just other people, and then also still dealing with some of the items within your personal lives as well too? And how do you guys? Yeah.
I'll start with that. I'm sorry.
So if you could hear on Facebook, the question was, how do therapists decompress based on the treatment and what they hear from their clients? Go ahead, ma'am.
And I jumped in because I feel like I'm the one doing, I don't want to say like it's not a competition, but 15 hours of therapy is intense. 3 hours every day. That's just when I'm actively engaging. I'm still meeting new people. I mean, it's a business, right? So I'm still assessing people and they're starting groups. So I'm hearing traumatic stuff all the time. So that was my level of excitement. I will. I think I'm very fortunate to have a support system outside of work, but also within work. So as a coordinator, one thing I work with my team is do not hesitate to talk to me or somebody about how you are feeling. We are dealing with people who at any moment can take their life. that can be traumatic for us. We talk a lot about secondary trauma. And so we do a lot of talking and processing and crying, but also, I encourage exercising. I encourage taking mental health days, taking vacations, reading, just having quiet time, meditation time, being able to really, we talk a lot about self-care, but self-care is a verb. So really putting that into action, that is very important to me and to my team. And I also have a director I am very, very fortunate to have leadership who likes to come in and check in with us and allows us to debrief with them and process what's happening. So I appreciate that question. That's a very good one.
Self-care is extremely important to us in this field. I mean, it's got to be the forefront of your life, because we do deal with a lot. We see a lot. We hear a lot. One of the main things I say for self-care is practice what you preach. Go to therapy. If you're telling someone else to go see a therapist, I believe as a therapist, and a lot of programs, a lot of counseling programs, psychology programs, that actually require you to go see a therapist. It's because how are you going to train someone or teach someone how to do something else if you don't do yourself? So a lot of the things that we talk about, we should be doing on our own. And I'm glad you also brought up suicide, because there's a lot of telltale signs that our support systems and other individuals can actually pinpoint, but that comes along with education. That's what my nonprofit is all about, bringing awareness, educating, helping people understand, buy in to this thing called mental illness. It's a real thing. We can actually see it through CAT scans and MRIs in the brain. And so there's a website I would like you guys to write down if you have time. I'll just put it out there so you can all go back and refer to it later. It's called Mental Health First Aid. And what it is when you seek, you'll get the training to understand what types of things that you can pinpoint from someone else, not diagnosing necessarily, but being able to be an actual support for that person as opposed to a hindrance. Because you can also be a hindrance for someone too if you're not educated well enough about what they're going through. A lot of my previous clients would always say that my family members don't understand me. I have no one to talk to. They don't understand what I've been through. They can't relate to what I'm going through. And that's because they probably can't, because they haven't been through what you've gone through. So what we can do, start doing is educating ourselves and also practicing what we preach.
Another thing is, and don't keep me up, we all know a doctor who smokes and tells people not to. We all know a hairdresser who can do amazing hair and her head always looks amazing. Therapists are some of the worst self-care people ever, because we're so busy giving, we're so busy taking care of other people. So if you know a therapist or a social worker or anybody who's involved in mental health, check in on them. My best friend is also a therapist we met in grad school. Part of the way we keep ourselves sane is talking to other people who we know have to maintain confidentiality, who we know interact with these same types of clients. But the reality is we don't always take this care of ourselves. I am extremely guilty of it. So if you know a clinician, you can be part of their self-care and just making sure that they take care of themselves, because we don't always do it.
I would say that one portion of it is getting to know yourself. So I personally really enjoy HBCU homecomings. So I work it into my schedule to make sure that I am there and I am present from the beginning to the end. That's something that works well for me. So when I put my call schedule out, you can match it up with what homecoming is going on in the fall. I think for me, if I'm connecting with my friends from Spelman, if I'm connecting with if I'm connecting with you all, I'm connecting with friends from the Herring. I'm connecting with friends from my residency or fellowship, those who understand bits and pieces in areas of my life in ways that others may not, because you can't expect one person to be all things to you at all times. So you really want to have that network together. You really want to know who you can tap when you need to tap someone in this area. When you're dealing with mental health, it can be a very isolating experience. So I could probably say, oh, I had this cough for 2 weeks, and people can say, oh, drink some tea, do this, do that. I walk into the room and say, gosh, I felt like killing myself for the past 2 weeks, radio silence. People don't know what to do next. They don't know what the next step is. I say, I'm so anxious, I can't even make it out of my room during the day. I go back home at night and I cry. I say that, again, people don't know how to respond. And so you want to have someone where you're saying that, they can say, all right, these are the next steps. This is what you need to do. And making sure that you have an idea of what that next step needs to be for you in particular.
So if I'm hearing Dr. Rowe correctly, Tennessee State University's homecoming. Great way to do it. So there's one more question I wanted to take right here, and then we're going to go to the next question from the panel. Go ahead.
So I'm training to be a psychologist, and a lot of the research.
Thank you.
Come on.
More workers in the vineyard.
We need you.
So a lot of the research shows that, like, African Americans historically have been over-pathologized with like severe, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. And I'm sure as psychiatrists, a lot of you all see that, and it's like this person's never been had a manic episode in their life. They don't know the difference between major depression, and even with younger people who are over-pathologized because of color of the skin, different things like that. How do you all look past that, or move past the diagnosis, and like work with them to help them, and kind of tease through what's this diagnosis versus what's maybe behavioral or something going on at home?
I will just say one thing about that. A large part of when I see patients who are admitted to the main hospital, so they may be in after an accident or after a heart attack, and they're asking us to come by to see them from psychiatry for a number of reasons. They may have a diagnosis on their chart for schizophrenia. I will start with that and ask additional questions and go through the DSM-5 and do those things, but I'm also looking for some other nuances that may have been missed or overlooked. And oftentimes it can actually be post-traumatic stress disorder that can be a part of that. That is sort of being misconstrued as a psychotic disorder. So anxiety and psychosis are two very different things. They're treated two very different ways, but you have to tease those things out. So I think that part of it is having that critical and discerning eye and wanting to find out what you can about this patient system, those who care and love them, and the world that they are operating within. Because if not, you can run the risk of giving someone an incorrect diagnosis with incorrect treatment, then they're not interested in continuing that treatment because it's not helping them, or they're having adverse side effects from medications that are prescribed because they're not the right medication for this particular person at this particular time. And so it is a process. When I personally meet patients, I'm usually one of the first psychiatrists they may have met because they're in the medical setting, and so I try to use that as an introduction to mental health in general and really try to pair them up with someone, hopefully like you, that can take those additional steps to make sure that they're being treated and addressed appropriately.
So I'm going to come to you in just a second, but I wanted to just add our other question to the panel to kind of shape the discussion. Do you guys believe that the treatment options that exist for people of color are adequate? Do you believe that there is enough support for people of color or folks in urban communities to address mental illness?
No.
Yeah, I would say.
Next question. Well, my question was along the same lines. How does the medical industrial complex fit into this, intersect into this conversation? If it seems like it's complex to diagnose us for who and what we are based on the lack of data that we have, it seems like the process of being made to diagnosis and a management system takes time, which then does my health insurance cover all of that?
So we're going to health insurance and the diagnosis as a whole. Like when you go and see a therapist, we have to. When you leave, we are trained to. We have to diagnose you with something in order to charge and be paid from your insurance. And so you'll see that every day. And going back to what he was saying, like, and the question, is there enough? When I got into this field, I know coming in as a black male, it's like, oh yes, come on, like a unicorn, please, and so we need more people who look like us in the field, so that we can address those issues where multiculturalism comes into play. Some things that, people of different cultures that may not understand certain behaviors. And so that's why it's also important for us to be multiculturally competent, because we may get a client that comes in from a total different background, and we may misunderstand some of their behavior, but that training and being multiculturally competent is important for all of us. And so come on in, bro.
The word's getting out, and it's people like you who are the tip of the spear. The term cultural competency and incompetency, I think, is at the heart of this question and is the answer to this question. Now, this DSM-5 now, this book and these series of books were designed to enhance what we refer to as inter-rater reliability. You can airdrop somebody into Paris, France, and see somebody there with a translator, and then have that person brought back here to the States, same symptoms, get the same diagnosis, but only if the clinicians are culturally competent. And so you are getting the word out. And I would like all of you folks to help us get the word out also. And that word is that one size doesn't necessarily fit all, and the milieu that a person emerges from is vitally important in the diagnosis and the treatment. We've all addressed the spirituality aspect of our personal lives and our approach to treatment. And if a clinician is not culturally competent, they are insensitive, the match will not be there between the clinician and the client. And so that's something you should look for in your training. That's something that the community should look for in seeking out a therapist or a provider.
Jerry, you have a question?
And then too, just to kind of quickly add to that, oftentimes research, when it's conducted, it's females that participate or Caucasians. And so we need us to participate for us to have research that is not biased and it's mutually exclusive, we have to participate. And I mean, I think that's the bottom line. It's plenty of us that participate, but I think that goes back to the Tuskegee study. Like we just don't trust, and so I encourage to participate. Anytime you see something about research, just participate.
The thing is, we never see it. Unless I'm in Starbucks, I never see an advertisement for a study. And then it's the trust factor. It goes all the way back to the beginning of mental health.
And I think the trust is linked up with being self-protective. And so you're trying to do things to help yourself out. So you're trying to pick and choose who and when you should trust. And that is a very complicated process to go through. And so we are sort of asking you in many ways to kind of take a step out on faith that there are people out there who are willing to help and support you. But I'm also not wanting to minimize that that's a really big step. Hey.
But another thing is,
Yes.
you have to be involved in mental health treatment in order to receive treatment. But I'm also a big proponent of asking questions. So natural hair, I can tell you what ingredients are in this Cantu, whatever it is that I'm putting on my hair, but we don't know what's going in our bodies. And so it's okay for you not to be sure and to not necessarily question the expertise of the clinician that you are working with, but ask them, what is the point of this? How is this going to help me? I have an allergy to this, or I took this medication before and it's giving me these side effects. Because it is an industry that is set up in a way to make money. Money is necessary though, but there are some things that are, in my personal opinion, unethical. You can ask questions. Medicine isn't always the answer, but medicine is part of the answer sometimes. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But you have a right as a client receiving services to be educated. If you ever look at HIPAA and all of those things, all of that information is in there. So don't just sign it if you don't really know what you're signing. Ask what it is. Because doctors will give it to you, sign it, and give you whatever it is that they feel is best, and don't have any of your input. So be a part of your treatment process. You are a part of your own treatment.
Got a question right here? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm also new to the mental health field. Dealing with African Americans, there's a lot of social issues that I feel like I have to address first before I can get to doing therapy. So how do you all balance that out? Because I feel like I spend a whole lot of time just dealing with the social aspect. So how do you balance that and get also African Americans to understand that their mental health is important?
That's what I was gonna, to address the, insurance, massive insurance complex, and to that, question, Delaney. Let's just be frank, insurance companies run our treatment process, pretty much. That's why a lot of our best doctors do not accept insurance, because they don't want a company or an organization telling them how to treat their patient when they've been trained in that particular field. Insurance companies are not trained doctors or clinicians. They're just people trying to make money. You know what I'm saying? So, we might have someone. Delaney and I worked at Harry Medical College. We might have someone that's come off the street, been on the street for 6 months, homeless, has nowhere to go after treatment, after he's been in inpatient treatment. We've treated him as much as we could for 7 days because the insurance company, or that's what the actual, insurance law or Tennessee will allow us to treat them. And then what do we do with that person? Send them right back to the street, because that's all we can do. But the thing is that, the CDC says it's a social ecological model. It starts with society, then it goes down to the community, then it goes to the relationship, then it goes to the individual. So all those components actually have to come to play. The community has to actually rally up together, come together, and offer services that insurance companies cannot offer or will not be willing to pay for. And that's services that go beyond the reach of the typical therapeutic treatment plan or the typical psychiatric diagnosis. If we're only seeing people for for a month or twice a month for 6 months because the insurance company says that's all we can see, and that person has more serious issues, PTSD and serious trauma, that's not going to help. That's not going to help that person. It's going to dig deep into the surface of that person and then just leave them hanging by the wayside, and then we send them right back out to expect them to be healthy. Lifetime cap.
I think to answer your question though, what I have to do is help them solicit their own community, right? Because there's a Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? There are basic needs, like if you don't have, food, if you don't have shelter, like don't try to tell me, don't have me think about my 5-year self, because I'm trying to figure out what I'm eating tonight, right? And so if you're a social worker, yes, those are things you can do. If not, it's how can you create a team around them of other practitioners and other people in their community that can help them with those basic needs so that you can focus on the mental and emotional stability. But if you're a social worker, of course, that is your responsibility. But if you're just a mental health counselor, then where you're going to stay, what you're going to eat, you can help with that, but that's not your role.
One thing I do, I just have a long list of resources.
Right.
That's just that simple. Just have a list of homeless shelters where you can get food, the crisis hotline. I mean, this goes all the way down the list. So that's just one tool that I use.
And a big part of what we do here is we have a homeless health service that really works on the homelessness population. Also, when I work with the complex behavioral service, a large part of that is connected with the nurse case managers and the social workers and the community partners and finding out what this person in particular needs. However, the amount of time and energy that it takes to bring all of that together can be extensive. The hope is that you're finding out what this person needs, and then you can use that information and these resources when someone else comes along who may have similar needs. But you have to, if you're not addressing what those patients' needs actually are as they view them and as they identify them, then you're going to miss out on having that interpersonal connection that you're going to need to be their therapist, their psychiatrist, their
So let me take one more question, and then we're going to shift to our final section. Go ahead, Kevin.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Kevin Haggett. I'm the director in the education space and also have a background in counseling. And I'm looking at you because I'm also an adjunct faculty member at CSU and WKU and undergraduate and graduate social work program. So we all cover social work here.
Thank you.
I say all of that, and he's fellow social worker as well. I say all of that, not to throw titles around all that, but I think that it speaks to an issue that we have that limits access to treatment. And that's that I wasn't surprised that you're the only social worker up there because I don't think everyone knows the differences between social work and psychology and counselor and LPC and psychiatrist. And you guys speak to those differences and how and where you should go for what and Yeah.
And we were just talking about that, you know, we were saying that most people don't know what a counselor does. What is the difference between a counselor and a psychiatrist? What's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? And so we have some of all of us up here, you know, and so I guess, you know.
You go to med school, then you do an internship, and then a residency, and if you're lucky, you want to, you do what's called a fellowship in any of particular subspecialties in psychiatry. So you're a physician first.
So I'm LMFT, so that's licensed marriage, family, and therapy. So when I go through a similar process, you can stop at a master's in clinical counseling. I've gone further to get a PhD, still PhD in clinical counseling. What I can do, I can diagnose, but those who are usually LMFTs really don't diagnose. It's more of a systems perspective of, what I mean by systems is we look at it from a relational standpoint. We don't come from a medical model and the whole diet, or from the prescribing medication. We don't do that. I think psychologists, can they prescribe medicine? Or I think psychiatrists.
In some states.
Right, so we don't prescribe medicine, LMFTs, we don't diagnose. And so if you don't want a diagnosis, well, at least I don't. We don't have to. I know LPCs. Is there LPC here? Yeah. Okay. So they usually do. But yeah, so it's focusing on the mental and the emotional stability from a relational standpoint.
So you can get a counselor, which you can assess, you can treatment plan, and diagnose if you are a mental. Here in our state, you have to have a special designation. You have to be a licensed professional counselor, which means you have a master's degree, 60-hour master's degree, 100 hours of practicum experience, 500 hours of internship, all the supervision. Then you have to have 2,000 hours of working in the field before you can sit to become a licensed professional counselor. And if you become a licensed professional counselor, well, the 3 tests, 2 tests, how many tests? I'm not at, I think it's 3 tests, And so that if you become an LPC in our state, that means you can't diagnose anybody if you only have an LPC. You can only treat certain, like family things or, not any type of mental health disorder. So if you become licensed and get the mental health service provider designation, then you can assess, treat, diagnose, and that's it, But what we cannot do is we cannot prescribe any medication. We'd have to send you to a psychiatrist or a psychologist.
And so I am a psychiatrist like Dr. Ritchie, so I've done my undergraduate training, my medical school training, my general psychiatry residency, which is 4 years, and then a 1-year fellowship in psychosomatic medicine. And so in addition to being able to do therapy, in addition to being training in therapy and family systems, we also give specific training in medications as well, because as Dr. Ritchie said, we're physicians as our framework, as our base work. And so a large part of that is shared medical decision making. And so if you come in and say that you want to have help for your depression and talk about it, and you actually do have not just a depressive disorder, but actually major depressive disorder, and you are interested in medications as part of your treatment plan, we would discuss different options for you. Pros, cons, side effects, costs, what would work for you. You want to take something once per day, only at night, multiple times per day, to really get you invested in the process of determining what might be the best option for you, taking our medical expertise into play, and then working with you to see how you respond to that treatment and then updating it and revising the plan as necessary. But we definitely do what we do in conjunction with everyone else, with the therapists, with the psychologists, with the social workers, to make sure that you're getting and receiving the wraparound services that you need. For some people who don't want to talk much or don't want to do anything but figure out what medication would help them, then they usually go more towards a psychiatrist for that reason. But we love to speak to you and hear what's happening to you as well.
I'm a therapist or counselor, same as Eric, and I also began working on my PhD in counseling psychology. And one thing about psychologists, we're able to actually do testing. We can test, and we can actually, for instance, if a child may have some type of, autism disorder or something on the autism spectrum, much. And that's a big thing, because once we start to test, and this is where we get our data from, we collect our information from, this is the information that we pump out to the public. So we test and we do research, and we collect our data, we get all this information, and a lot of the testing and the research that we get, or the data that we get, are not necessarily people of our skin color. And so we pump out information that may not be necessarily accurate. I'm not going to say it's incorrect, but it's not necessarily accurate. And so another one thing that I also wanted to point out too is a term that we learned here at Vanderbilt, which is really great. It's called client centered. And what we learn how to do is not label a person by their diagnosis. Actually get involved and understand that person as an individual, and then kind of understand them as a person. So we do a lot of things as more so building rapport, relational types of things with a patient, and then also determining whether or not they need to go further for psychiatric treatment or other types of treatment.
I am an LMT as well, so it's very much so what Trillian explained. But I think the point that I would like to make is that it requires training, and it requires supervision, and it requires ongoing development. So we all have people in our lives who give us advice. You are a spiritual person, you have somebody that you seek spiritual counsel from. If you think you may be contending with, or someone that you care about is contending with a mental health issue, you need to be talking to someone who has mental health training. Because we can all watch as many TV shows as we want and think we can diagnose somebody with bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety, and that may be accurate. You may have figured it out, but it also may not be. And that person is not inclined to treat them. So just keeping that in mind.
As a licensed clinical social worker, I wear probably all the hats, minus the testing and the meds. As a licensed clinical social worker, I am able to do diagnosis. I could, if I wanted to, go into private practice and do billing. I can also, being connected with the community is a big, big part of social work as far as I'm concerned. I think a lot of times social work is a bad rap, especially in a hospital setting. That's my humble opinion. We become the dumping ground for the difficult families and the difficult people, but that's okay because that's our training. That's what we're taught to deal with the difficult people. So my answer is to be really short because I'm capable of doing minus testing and meds, most of what they're talking about, including, facilitating group therapy and individual therapy and doing some specialized training, and that's what I choose to go into.
It's important to know that counseling came out of social work.
So thank you guys for clarifying that, because I think when we talk about this idea of breaking the stigma, it helps to understand who can we go to, what are our options, what treatment looks like. And so I want to kind of bring us to a close. And I know there's still some questions out there. We'll give an opportunity for everybody to connect with the panelists. But what is it that we can do as individuals in our homes and in our communities to help break this stigma and get people that we know that need the treatment, that actual treatment? And I'll say that going back to a comment from Rhonda Malone Cameron on Facebook, she was asking about different types of treatment, from holistic medications, alternative medications. But how do we break that stigma, and how can we then get the support to folks that need it? Each person can address that quickly if you don't mind.
I think kind of going into the alternative treatments, it's dance therapy, theater therapy, art therapy. That turns it from, let's just sit here and talk, to it's interactive, it's more fun, it's less intimidating for some. So that's one way. And another way I would say to decrease the stigma is focusing on the positives, especially if you're trying to get in people who normally wouldn't come to counseling. If you say, you have a problem, you're the problem, why am I going to come? Right? But if you say, hey, do you want a healthier relationship? Are you single and you want to be married? Let's focus on you. So honestly, that works for me. When I go into colleges and speak, it's, I know you're single, you want to be married, let's come talk. Oh my God, yeah! And then it's like a bait and switch. Like you get them in there with the good stuff, and then you're like, before we get there, let's just talk about some of this here. And it works for me.
I would say don't shame. And don't shame people who are continuing with mental illnesses, but also don't shaming people into, oh, you should be more supportive of mental health is not going to make them more supportive. A lot of our ancestors and our elders and our grandparents, we're just trying to survive. If you want people to be advocates for and supporters of mental health, you can't shame them into supporting it. Educate them, tell them why it's important, tell them why it matters. Because if you go the route of beating people over the head with the DSM, much like people try to beat people over the head with the Bible, it doesn't work. People run in the opposite direction. Also, this may sound a little contradictory, find better insults. And by that I mean, if you see somebody who is dealing with something that seems emotionally unstable, don't start off with, oh, you're bipolar. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, you need to go to the hospital. Because there are people who actually need to go to the hospital. So if you're going to do the back and forth joking thing, I do it. I go with my friends. Find better insults. And don't shame them.
I saw that Facebook Live question myself, and that's why I had my hand up earlier, because I was going to ask my fellow panelists if any of them had prescribed exercise for patients. I do it all the time, exercise, yoga, and as Eric said, I have a resource network for pastoral counseling. So yes, we're expanding our repertoire of possibilities, of options. Research has shown that merely getting up and moving, rather than the psychomotor retardation associated with such illnesses as depression, just getting up and moving is actually therapeutic for a great many people. Not everybody needs medication. About 25% of people do. About 50% of people need a combination of medication and psychotherapy, and about 25% of people need just talk therapy or some other amalgam of treatments. So it's not all just medication.
So I think we live in this technologically advanced social society where we do what's cool and sexy, right? And so it seems simple to me, but I just feel like we can all do something about it. Like every person in here should be tweeting that they're here, taking selfies that, hey, I'm here working on my mental health. Because every single day you probably scroll through your timeline and see 25 people in the gym getting their physical looking good together, right?
Or depressed.
Yeah, but they're depressed. Or depressed, right. Either working out or depressed. But we have to start looking at our mental health the same way we look at, our physical, like I look good, We got to make it cool, and we got to make it sexy, and we got to make it something that, it's like, so I always use it as an example. Coming from the nonprofit world, it's hard to get people to buy into what you're trying to do. Anyone that's never worked in nonprofit knows that. But, say, when the flood hit, it's like, it was cool. You were like lame if you weren't out volunteering cleaning up. Like, how could you not be out here taking pictures of yourself with trash bags and gloves, taking a dishwasher out of somebody's house because their house was flooded? We have to incorporate this into our daily lives and really just see it, use it for yourself. If you have insurance, it's likely that, a therapist will take your insurance. Us at the Ross Center, we never turn anyone away for their inability to pay. It's affordable. So just give it a shot, give it a try. Take the first step and experience it so that you can share that experience with others and so that we can spread this and so more people can become aware and more conscious about their mental health.
One thing I will say briefly is just have an air of transparency. So you can take the front, the facade, the person that you're trying to show that has it all together. Nobody has it all together all of the time. So let's put that to the side. So now that you're not trying to fake, you're not trying to front, and now you're trying to be transparent, you have now allowed this space to now be present for you to fill it with that real person that you now want to be. So I think with stigma, people want to be perceived in a certain way, and that keeps them from actually living the life that they want to live. So if it means that you go to your primary care provider and say, hey, you know what, I know I look really great on Instagram, but really, that's not what's actually happening. Or you know what, I have pictures of me in the gym, but I'm in there for 2 minutes, and then I'm running out the door. Really, people want to have that preference. And do your best not to get caught up with what you see out there with those images and think that everyone else has it together and everybody is living this fabulous life, because that's not the truth and the reality either. And so I think that you break down the stigma by you being your authentic self and interacting with others on that authentic level, and then they can seek the help and care and support that's necessary. Everybody needs help sometimes.
And I think it's important for us to go, hey, don't kick me out. We're gonna have to learn how to disconnect. We are comparing our lives based on other people's highlight reels.
That's right.
And I think of it in terms of, when we see like a trailer for a new movie, and then we go see it and we be like, they showed the best part in the trailer. That's what Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that's what we're comparing our lives to. So, what can we do differently? Make it a point to take a hiatus off of social media so you can go live your best life. So you can learn how to be the best version of yourself. With that, there's a recurring theme. This is just a social worker therapist in me, so I just gotta live in my truth. Willingness, what are you willing to do? And willfulness, are you digging your heels in? And I think at some level we have to decide which category we fit in order to be able to make the necessary changes in any aspect. We just happen to be talking about mental health, but we could be talking about anything. What changes are you willing to make? What adjustments are you willing to make so that you can be the best version of yourself?
Some things that we can do to reduce the stigma of mental health and mental illnesses. It goes back to that society, community, relationship, individual, socio-ecological model. And one, society has to actually buy into the idea that mental illness is real as any other illness. And I think Michelle Obama, Prince Harry, who's over there in Europe doing a big campaign based on his own mental illness experiences. They're doing a great job, or they have done a great job of putting that out there. And some of these rap artists and people with stars, they're actually coming out and saying that this is a part of me, and they want people to accept them as they are. This actually is a part of society. So then the community has to come into play. Community actually has to start providing individuals with the resources, access to care, other things that people may not know about or have. And then also relationship. Relationship includes developing a network of people who accept you for who you are. And that doesn't mean that they have to understand you, but they accept you. That can be a clinician, that can be your friends, that can be family members and whatnot. But I always tell my patients that when you have this network of individuals that accept you, it's like building the perfect friend. But it's just a lot of different people. But then they become the perfect friend. And then the individual has some self-awareness, self-actualization, self-acceptance, and also work on their own self-esteem. They actually have to put in the work, do the work for themselves as well, educate themselves in order to understand who they are, what they're experiencing, and where to go and find help.
Can we give our panel a round of applause? Questions, a lot more comments, but we want to get you guys home before it gets too late so you can take care of yourself, right? Because self-care, that's probably some of the takeaway from today. So let me just wrap up really quick, but before we do that, I wanted to point you guys to this particular website. This is a movement that's just recently been launched by a lady named Shanti Das. It's called Silence the Shame, and I heard it mentioned here, the word shame. We've talked a lot about how do we get rid of this stigma. I think it goes back to this idea of silencing the shame of social media. Shanti wanted to be here with us. She couldn't be here, but I told her I'd mention her movement to you guys. She's a former recording artist, and she's got a lot of support behind this movement. And I think this is helping with the stigma, because the more people in mainstream society that get behind this issue of mental health and pushing it into the forefront, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, you name a rapper, they're talking about it now. All of this is helping culturally to move our community forward and to help break that stigma. So let's give our panel another round of applause. So if this is your first conscious conversation, thank you for coming out. If you've been before, we appreciate you continuing to come back. Please connect with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We usually post everything that we do on social media. We're not really going to spam you with email, because I hate spam as well. Let's give Jameson and Vanderbilt another round of applause. list if anybody wants to get connected. And you guys be safe. Make sure you go back and share the Facebook feed as well, so we can keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.
Great, man, great. How about yourself? Great to see you as well, man.
Did you enjoy the cigar event?